You're watching the Intel Network and Edge V-Summit series with our focus today on building the intelligent enterprise edge. As interest in the edge grows, enterprises are now looking for an edge environment with minimum hardware and software diversity, maximum consistency, and also consolidation of workloads. So, how do service providers and their partners meet this challenge, and what further trends can we expect to see in the next few years? Well, joining me now to discuss this convergence at the enterprise edge are Bob Ghaffari, General Manager, Enterprise and Cloud Networking Division, Network Platforms Group at Intel, Brian Lappin, Head of Product Management at BT, David Shacochis, VP of Enterprise Technology and Field CTO at CenturyLink, and David Lopez Meco, who is Manager of Connectivity Innovation, Project Lead, Enterprise Networking and Edge Computing at Telefonica. Hello again, everybody. Thanks for joining us again on our panel discussion. David, let me start with you. How does CenturyLink see this convergence trend at the edge, IoT, enterprise, and also the network edge? And as a service provider at the center of all this, how do you see things shaping up?
So convergence is an interesting word. There's certainly the concept of convergence from a standpoint of software distribution and general purpose computing. Increasingly, we're starting to think about the workload as a pretty converged term, whether we're talking about a virtualized network function, whether we're talking about a more containerized network function running as a loosely coupled service, or whether we're talking about a more traditional IT workload and all the different places that applications and business logic can run. Thinking about the workload is really the convergence that we see going on. And there's a wide range of different compute venues that those workloads can run in, especially in this emerging and open landscape of the fourth industrial revolution type of use cases that we're seeing, where ultra low latency transactions coupled with high bandwidth requirements are really opening up a wide range of new use cases for those converged computing venues to run on either a universal CPE device or where you need more horsepower, more encapsulated clusters of cloud computing, private cloud, or extensions of the public clouds, whereby a wide range of converged use cases can run. A VNF to maybe add an environment to a software-defined wide area network, but then a range of other loosely coupled services that are going to be running on that edge private cloud, for example. So the idea of convergence is really one around the idea that workload is the new convergence, figuring out all the different types of workloads that are necessary for the industry and where they need to be running, and what sorts of types of business outcomes they can enable by putting the right workload on the right computing venue connected to the right network, and then orchestrate all of that workload lifecycle together with good visibility and operational control is the convergence we see. And that's how we're really organizing our company and organizing our platform strategy to be able to help our customers explore a wide range of new use cases that they can achieve in that converged landscape.
Thanks, David, for that answer. That's great. David Lopez from Telefonica. Does Telefonica see the same convergence, the same trends at the enterprise edge?
Yeah, absolutely. The point made by David is really good. We are totally aligned, and I would like to add some more angles on the convergence. One is the user experience convergence, because we are also seeing how our clients demand that they can deploy staff in the same infrastructure or different ones, but from a same portal, from the same marketplace. So along with this infrastructure convergence or orchestration convergence, we are seeing how, especially in the segment we are targeting in my project, the SMEs, how they demand also convergence on the user experience. They don't want to go for different portals, etc., to deploy stuff or managing the stuff and have visibility on the network and so on. So this type of convergence is also very important. As for the operational convergence and the infrastructure convergence, the demand from our clients is pretty clear. But once you go in the reality of the stuff, we see how still the networking applications and the IT applications have different requirements in the low level on the networking level. So probably if you buy services from the same manufacturer or the same vendor, you will get this kind of convergence. But when you want a disaggregated model where you take vendor A, vendor B, and different kinds of applications, then the reality is a little bit more complex. I expect that this, with the re-architecturing of these applications, and if the ecosystem moves these to containers or more microservice oriented architecture or more cloud native architectures, we'll see how even in this disaggregated scenario, the real convergence. And this is along with the infrastructure convergence. Obviously, if everything is in containers and deployed in this kind of architecture, we'll see how we can deploy this in the same infrastructure, in the same universal CPE, or in the same telco edge, or wherever. So that's my additional point to David's.
Thank you, David. We're really building up the picture nicely here. Brian, what about BT? What are your views? How do you think these edges will converge over time, if indeed they will?
Well, yeah, thanks, Guy. I don't think there's anything controversial from me. I'm not going to contradict anything that's been said already. I think just taking maybe a slightly different perspective from it slightly as well, around the role of enterprise edge. So I think what's going to really drive a lot of this is where the data is being created and then how you're going to use that data. So very much we see that there's going to be an increasing trend that data is created and needs to be used outside of the data center or outside of the public cloud. That's not to say that the data doesn't need to go to the public cloud, but the data is being created in shop floors, in manufacturing, and other locations. So I think that's one of the key trends that we see. Now, what does that mean in terms of convergence? Well, I think customers are still going to need the infrastructure at their enterprise edge to collect and enable that data. But then we very much see that the cloud is still going to be the destination of choice for that data. I think that's inevitable. You're going to see data being pushed to the cloud as networks improve, network latency improves, as the cloud providers push further out to the edge. But I think David mentioned it earlier on as well. There's going to be some things that make the data want to still stay at the enterprise edge or even the network edge. And those are going to be things around latency or availability or security. Now, if you take the example of a manufacturing plant, data created from sensors or industrial machines, they want to take that data, they want to analyze it, then they want to make improvements, potentially real-time, closed loop, back into those manufacturing environments to make the improvements real-time. You could see a use case for that where that very much stays on the enterprise edge. So I think what we see when we talk about convergence is certainly, there's a place for all the different edges, if you like, in the ecosystem and the architecture. I think the challenge does come around, which I think both Davids have mentioned, is then how do you consolidate workloads or orchestration or management across those different environments? And I think that is, certainly the hyperscaler guys would have a view of that. They would say, well, use our service, we can extend our service to the edge, and you can have a single domain, but that creates its own problems in terms of if you use more than one cloud, then what do you do at that stage as well? So I think, convergence I definitely see it happening, and I definitely see there's a role for all of the edges in this environment, and I think that's going to be the interesting thing that plays out over the next few years.
Thank you, Brian. Bob, throughout this vSummit series, we've heard about how Intel is working on various different edges, enterprise edge, IoT, network edge. How do you see this convergence from the enterprise point of view?
So when we think about convergence, in my mind, it all starts off with network. And so we have the ability, and we've seen that enterprise edge converging, where you actually have got the networking capabilities, the security capabilities, in a way converging. And depending on what you're really trying to go do on that edge, you're going to need to make sure that you've got solutions packaged up to address what the business needs are in the right fashion. And so, for example, software-defined WAN being a key element, you then got possibly the firewall capabilities, depending on what you're doing with your local data, how you're trying to manage that. And then you've got this whole trend around security as a service or SASE, and having that be part of the solution, depending on where you're trying to push your data and what kind of analysis you're going to be doing it with your data. So we sort of see that as being, in a way, foundational. And then when you bring the other capabilities that enterprises will need, you've got this other convergence of IoT workloads. You've got possibly other things you're trying to do with your enterprises, and having this capability from a platform standpoint to go address that, we think is important. And then, for example, the kinds of things that we're really trying to do is just make sure that we've got the right architectures, from the Intel Atom processors to our Xeon processors, having a very scalable roadmap there to be able to go address that. Having the ability in terms of doing AI and analytics, and having a flexible architecture so you can do what you need that might be latent in nature on-prem for the enterprise, where their use cases really lend itself well to that, versus how you actually going to bring the data back and then do it either in the local cloud or back in the big cloud far away.
Thanks, Bob. David Shacochis, can I turn to an aspect that we hear an awful lot about at the moment, and that is the importance of the ecosystem, the collaboration and ensuring interoperability. Can I ask how you at CenturyLink are working with the ecosystem and the value chain in order to deliver on your enterprise edge strategy?
Well, sure. Ecosystem's an interesting term. A lot of times people use that term forgetting that there's a reason for the ecology in the metaphor, right? Ecosystems ecosystems sprout up, right? New things happen in an ecosystem, maybe not even by design and maybe without permission. And so you really ecosystems and the terms of vendor ecosystems and technology ecosystems need to enable a lot of open thinking, and really interoperability and open standards are the soil in which a lot of these ecosystems can grow. And so that's really the way we're embracing with our overall strategy, which is our global network is highly integrated with a number of the different public cloud platforms, in addition to all the different places we have on net. When it comes to the different computing venues, we have a very diverse interoperable approach at the computing layer, whether it is in our partnership with Intel to go and bring a lot of CenturyLink first-party technology online in a variety of different locations, whether it is universal CPE at the edge, or whether it is in some of the 100+ edge computing centers that we're building inside the core of our network, or if it is all the computing that we can resell and build managed solutions on in the global public cloud core with partners like AWS and Google and Microsoft Azure. And then at the orchestration layer, the other important interoperability piece that we want to be able to enable is really in the software development pipelines, and making sure that our orchestration and the way we make all of those venues available, and the way that we make the different compute venues and their associated network connections available, is compatible with a wide range of software delivery pipelines, whether those are containerized cloud native service style deliveries, or whether those are different types of software packaging that can go and be deployed to any one of those computing venues connected to the right network and then lifecycle managed. So really that idea of open standards and interoperability is the soil in which you can grow. Then I suppose to continue that metaphor forward, it's all about deciding how much of a soil bed do you want to go build? And we're literally building soil beds for this kind of interoperability and open ecosystem growth, both within our vendor partners as well as our customers to benefit from, in just about everywhere our network can reach. So whether it is with a private cloud that we put on premise, or whether it is a converged UCPE cluster of computing out inside of a local office, or whether it is edge computing inside of the CenturyLink network, or one of the massive pools of computing that we can make available in the public cloud, our network can reach all those places, our orchestration can reach all those places, and that's our approach towards fostering ecosystem development.
Thank you, David. I'd like to move on and ask all of you about your views as to where we see the trends in the next 5 to 10 years or so. We all like to try and get a grasp of where the industry is heading and what to look out for. Brian, can I ask you first, what are you seeing? What key developments will you anticipate are going to happen at the enterprise edge over the next 5 or so years?
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't say 10 years. I'm not sure I can predict that far in the future. I think one of the key things, I mentioned it earlier on, is if we take away the sort of network technology or the compute technology, I think the key trend that we are seeing is what's going to happen at the edge. So I think we've seen some stuff with COVID. The way that people work at the edge, where the edge is for many people, will change. So the edge used to be offices, it's going to be more at home, etc. So the edge is going to change in nature, I think, over the next 5 years. I think that's going to be accelerated by some of the events that are happening just now. I think the other area is the amount of data that's going to be created at the edge, and how our customers are going to try and use data to differentiate their capabilities. So if it's a pop-up store or a retail outlet or a manufacturing outlet or a distribution center, data is going to be key. It's always been key for customers, but I think some of the new technologies around AI and ML really allow you to analyze that data and use it very often at real time. So I think for me, that's one thing. I think the edge, the importance of the edge, the data it's created at the edge, what people are trying to do at the edge in terms of improving the productivity is going to be some real, that's going to be a real shift over the next, 2, 3, 5 years. And I think then how as service providers we react to that is going to be interesting. I think a lot of what's already been talked about is going to be key. It's about having your infrastructure in the right place to accommodate where that data needs to be at any one time, whether that's staying in the customer's enterprise, whether it's going out to the network edge, whether it's going out to the cloud. I think that bringing together of some way of managing those workloads consistently across that environment on a global basis at scale is going to be key. I think one of the big topics just now is 5G. I think that role in terms of improving networks, improving customers' capability, introducing new things into as David says, the ecosystem, I think is going to be a key part of it as well. So, I think the edge, the enterprise edge, is going to be a key part of the customer's environment, and I think that the innovation around that and how customers can use data is really going to drive how we architect our network and how we architect our services to address those sort of challenges and new requirements that the customers have.
And David Shacochis, what does enterprise edge, what developments does Century expect to see in the enterprise edge over the next 5 years?
Well, what we're really seeing, as I think others have pointed out, what's exciting really about edge models is that because they serve workload combinations where the latency requirements are very low, the bandwidth requirements high, or some combination of those two factors, you're actually enabling use cases that hadn't existed before. Net new use cases, not refactored or rehosted or re-engineered use cases, but actually net new business outcomes can be achieved when you are fostering a digital interaction and applying business logic closer to that digital interaction. You can actually do things that weren't possible before when the successive number of round-trip transactions made the overall use case infeasible. So we're really looking at and seeing a lot of early adoption of our edge computing solutions portfolio in industries where they are either asset intensive or interaction intensive. In industries such as manufacturing and logistics and transportation, organizations with a lot of increasingly smart devices that need to make decisions based on data that gets stale really fast, right? That the time to make that decision can be within seconds. And therefore, all of the different transactions that feed data to that smarter device need to be done within seconds. And then having a footprint that can bring you, single-digit millisecond latencies to a lot of those asset-intensive industry locations is really valuable and is starting to open up smart routing inside of logistics facilities. It's starting to open up vertical supply chain integration use cases inside a lot of some surprising industries. Even some retail hospitality type of customers that we're working with are still very asset intensive, but certainly interaction intensive industries. And they're thinking about vertically integrating up into their supply chain, especially in light of the global interconnectedness that a lot of organizations are now facing. They're now realizing that in a world where you can't always rely on the global interconnectedness of the supply chain, having better data-driven control over your supply chain it is a big important way for you to apply edge computing into your the overall way you take inputs and feed them into your business. We're also seeing, and we've historically seen a lot of edge computing types of use cases in industries where the digital interactions between business models has historically needed to be very low. Industries like online gaming, industries like even financial services. Those are organizations that have been at the forefront of really thinking very consciously about where their workloads need to be deployed, what are the round-trip latencies between users or parties on their workloads, either in terms of fairness or in terms of financial transaction latency. It can mean dollars and cents either way. So there's a lot of industries that have been adopting edge computing solutions and styles for a while and are now rapidly expanding them. There's a number of asset-intensive industries that are on the forefront of starting to experiment with what edge computing can mean. And so really it's an exciting sort of wide open time. A lot of folks have called it a fourth industrial revolution, whereby instead of highly digitizing a lot of our transactions and making them more centralized in a cloud model, we're now starting to decentralize a lot of that computing, and we're starting to see solutions that take the global cloud core and the distributed cloud edge and open up a wide range of new styles of digital business where you acquire, analyze, and act upon your enterprise data in ways that you hadn't thought of before.
David Lopez at Telefonica, what are the key trends that you're seeing?
Well, first, there are our clients that, as David said, they are pushing really hard for having the applications deployed at the edge for whatever the reason, cloud gaming industry, the industry 4.0, and this kind of stuff. So we will see how our customer will push everyone in the technology ecosystem, service providers, vendors, etc., to provide this kind of everything, infrastructure, orchestration layers, whatever, to enable these kind of use cases. But in Telefonica, the way we see three main trends that can shape the future of the enterprise edge. First is the acceleration of the migration to the cloud, but in a cloud-native fashion. I mean, these new use cases probably will deploy applications that are built from scratch in a greenfield, in a cloud-native way. So they will enable the deployment of these applications everywhere, okay, because of the way they are built. That's one important thing. Okay, until now we've seen how some of these applications are still like lift and shift at the same applications that they had before, but put it in the cloud. Now we are going to start see the cloud native applications for real, and in the 5 to 10 years everywhere. The second big trend, and we hope is like that, is the general deployment of 5G networks that will bring basically they will erase the distance between the central clouds and the edge. Okay, it still will be a lot of stuff at the on-prem, but will be something that truly has to run on-premise for performance requirements, bandwidth, or for legal reasons or whatever. Okay, but 5G will erase the distance between these. So this will accelerate probably the migration of these workloads to the central cloud, or to the third trend, which is the massive availability of the edge computing infrastructure. Okay, I know that edge computing can be at the telco edge or one site per country, and as telcos we want to believe, and we believe that the edge will be a big part of the edge will be at the telco edge. So with the general availability of the telco edge or other edge, plus the 5G, plus the cloud native applications, we'll see how even the most demanding applications in terms of bandwidth, performance, etc., will be migrate to a central cloud or to an edge computing node near the neighborhood or the manufacturing site or wherever. So still, there will be, in our vision, some workloads that, for whatever the reason, will remain at the on-prem itself, and we are seeing it today, for example, with the campus networks or some small data centers our customers are deploying, even new data centers. But that's the way we see. With this scenario, we envision the enterprise edge every day thinner. Okay, and because that migration to the central cloud, the edge, or wherever, And in this scenario also, we see that the SD-WAN technology is a key technology to enable the secure connection of all of these distributed edge that our customer will have. And they have to connect them in a reliable way, secure way, and in a way that they can manage all these connections through a central management site. So that would be our vision on this.
Thank you, David. Bob, we've heard from 3 of your service provider partners as to their views of the key trends that we're going to see. But what about Intel? What are the key trends and developments that you anticipate for the enterprise edge in the near future?
I think one thing we can agree on that everybody has a slightly different view in terms of how they're seeing the edge. And so with that, what that really means is that you really need an architecture that can adhere to what people really need to do depending on their business requirements. And so this whole concept of having this thin, medium, thick, and what you place on your enterprise edge versus what you do locally in your local cloud versus what you actually bring into the public cloud, I think are going to be aspects that enterprises will need to think about as they bring and manage their workloads. And so for us then, having an architecture that can actually address this well, no matter how you're trying to go manage that, I think that's really important. And then also knowing that this edge is going to evolve. And so today, most of it, depending on what geo you're in, is going to be wired, either IP, MPLS. On the WAN side now, we've got the evolution or revolution to 5G, going from 3G and 4G, and then of course you've got on the LAN side Wi-Fi, and now you've got the ability to do more as it relates to private mobility and possibly using some capabilities there, and so the ability to have an architecture that can sort of mix and match, and depending on what you're trying to do and depending on how you want to manage your data, how you're getting your data, where you're getting your data from, and having that architecture that can sort of meld to what you're trying to go do in terms of like the computational requirements you're going to have, the analytics and AA capabilities you need to sort of bring to bear, either what you do locally or what you might do on the local cloud or in the public cloud. And having this consistent architecture and this architecture that can sort of be flexible to address that in a performant way, we think is really important. And we love working with our partners to go enable them so they can help bring these capabilities into the market.
Thank you, Bob, and to all our panelists, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And don't forget, you can watch the additional interviews and discussions on the Intelligent Enterprise Edge as part of the Intel Network and Edge V Summit series. But for now, thank you for watching and goodbye.